Hey, this is Bill Bolton from theSpeakingHusky.com and the Speaking Husky DIY Postgraduate Institute of the Communication Arts. This is part 2 of the Speaking Husky Teaches series, Overcoming the Fear of Public Speaking, Overcoming Stage Fright. Ladies and gentlemen, before I get into the main thing I'm going to speak with you about today, I need to let you know what happened in Toastmasters. First of all, you will be watching me giving a speech for my Toastmasters group, which I believe went very well. The thing is, I don't have a copy of that speech, and all I can figure is that someone on the internet is going to drop onto this video, and you're going to see this, and it's going to save you a lot of pain in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, I have this old DVC right here, and the top button, I don't even really know what it does. The bottom button's the record button, okay? I pushed the top button, so I didn't get a video recording, and so you're watching me in my office. Not a big deal. Just a little frustrating, but not a big deal. So I hope I saved someone else out there that trouble. If I had been maybe 5 minutes earlier, I was 15 minutes early. If I had been 20 minutes early, maybe that wouldn't have happened. Ladies and gentlemen, my adrenaline was in almost perfect shape when I got up to give my presentation. It gave me energy to get through my presentation, but I think at the moment I pushed that wrong button, it was just a slight bit too high. And if I had arrived only a couple minutes earlier, I think everything would have gone good, and you get to see me in front of my Toastmasters group. If you want to see that, there's other videos on my YouTube page you can look at, and there'll be more to come, by the way. Here is now part 2, which is the speech I gave to my Toastmasters group just a few hours ago. Fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests, and those of you watching on YouTube, whether you're watching this on YouTube in the year 2011 or the year 2111, I believe that I have a timeless message for you today. I want to talk about perfectionism, and I'm going to tie perfectionism specifically into public speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, I only have 2 points. My first point is that perfectionism holds us back from becoming the good and the very good speakers that all of us were intended to be. The second point I have is that there is a way to overcome this perfectionism, and that is to become an iPod. And I know right now some of you are thinking, what in the world, this guy is insane. Trust me. You'll get it when I get to the iPod. And lucky for you, the first part, or first point I should say, is very brief and will be to that becoming an iPod very quickly. Point number 1, perfectionism holds us back from becoming the speakers that we were all meant to be. And I believe every one of you out there is at least a good speaker. Many of you are very good, and some of you are great speakers. What does perfectionism do? When we believe that we have to give a perfect speech, what happens is we become anxious. What happens is we may never give a speech at all because we think that the speech has to be perfect. What happens is we spend too much time getting ready for the speech. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no such thing as a perfect speech. A quote from a great motivational speaker that's helped me a lot with this, because I used to think that every single speech I gave had to be perfect, and my eye contact had to be perfect, and my gestures had to be perfect, and my hair had to be in perfect place, and my belt had to look just right. No, 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 no. The great motivational speaker Les Brown says this. He says, practice does not make perfect. Practice makes improvement. So every time I get up to make a speech, I'm becoming a better speaker. I'm becoming a better speaker shooting this video right now. But it doesn't have to be perfect. The cure. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you a story before I get to the cure that I think describes, just to a ridiculous extent, how far some of us can go with perfectionism. Several years ago, the famous Hollywood director and Academy Award-winning director, I might add, Martin Scorsese, was shooting the movie Gangs of New York. Leonardo DiCaprio and Cameron Diaz were on the cast, and there was a scene in that movie where Cameron Diaz slaps Leonardo DiCaprio, and she just turns his head side. When I saw that movie, I was wondering if it was real. Was she really slapping him that hard? And yes, ladies and gentlemen, she was. And now I know the story about that. After the second take where Leonardo's getting his head taken off by Cameron Diaz Palm, he goes to Martin Scorsese and he says, Martin, don't we have enough takes of this? I mean, Cameron's over there knocking the hell out of me, Marty. And Scorsese says, Leo, back in the day, Bob De Niro and Bob would just take a punch in the face, man, and he would do take after take of, you're just getting slapped. The up-and-coming, at that time anyway, up-and-coming actor says, okay, Marty, whatever's good for Bob and you is good enough for me. They go on and they do 35 takes of this scene. And at the end of that time, Leonardo DiCaprio is laid flat back on his back. He's almost unconscious. His face, or one side of his face anyway, looks like a cantaloupe. He looks up at Martin Scorsese and he says, Marty, did we get a good take? And he goes, kid, you did good. Now we need to do 6 more takes from 6 different angles. And actually, what he said was we need to do that same take from 6 different angles. You multiply that out, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking over 200 takes of Leonardo DiCaprio getting slapped. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that perfectionism can do that to us as speakers, that we can beat ourselves up internally to a point where we are afraid to get back up and make a speech. Now, the cure, ladies and gentlemen, and you might have noticed the word now. Former President Bill Clinton uses it a lot. Some of us in Toastmasters call the word now an advanced filler word. It's not and it's not and but it can be a filler word, and I think I may have just used it at one, ladies and gentlemen. So, if you had any illusions that I was giving a perfect speech, it's gone right now. The cure is to become an iPod. Ladies and gentlemen, as of the day I'm shooting this video, it's been the last week we've lost a great business leader, Steve Jobs. Now, to some of us, Steve Jobs was more than just a business leader. He was almost a spiritual figure. And the reason Steve was like that for me was the commencement address that he gave at Stanford University in 2005. Among other things, in that speech, Steve said this very famous line. He said that when he was about 17, someone said, and he couldn't remember who said this, but someone said, if you ask yourself each day, if this were the last day of my life, would I live my life like this? He said, number one, inevitably, at some point, you're going to be right. It's going to be the last day of your life. And I say that, R.I.P. Steve. I think Steve would be glad that that humor is still passing on and passing across the internet right now. The other thing he said was that if you ask that question every day and the answer is no, and by the way, Steve did ask himself that question every day, and I do now as well myself. If the answer to that question is no for too many days in a row, you can be assured your life is on the wrong course. Something about Steve Jobs and that Stanford commencement address. I think that perfect speeches don't include using notes. When I first was exposed to that speech, it was in writing. So I go to YouTube to watch the speech. He's reading the speech. He's practically reading. He looks down and then he makes eye contact. To me, that's not a perfect speech, but so what? It's one of the best speeches I've ever heard in my life. Something else I've learned about Steve in the last week was that I thought that he loved to give those product announcements where he got up to sell the iPods and MacBooks and iPhones. Well, he didn't love those. In fact, I've learned that he was a shy person who really didn't like the spotlight. And I saw a former executive interviewed who explained how he was able to give such good speeches for Apple conventions. He said that Steve literally became an iPod. And what the gentleman meant by Steve becoming an iPod is he said that he believed in Apple's products so much, and he believed in the benefits of those products so much, that he wasn't Steve, he was the product. He totally forgot himself. And ladies and gentlemen, a few minutes ago I was frustrated because I had tried to get a take of this video. Then I remembered that the point of this video is, and in fact the name of this speech is, the perfection of imperfection. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't care if I look silly wearing a cartoon dog t-shirt. I'm not worried if there are crumbs on my face from lunch. My goal is to get my message across to all of you watching this video, and anything else is secondary. I am not thinking about myself at all right now. I think this is very similar to what Janet Esposito, who is an expert in overcoming speech anxiety, and this is one of Janet's books. This book is called In the Spotlight, Overcoming the Fear of Public Speaking Anxiety, and I believe Overcoming the Fear of Stage Fright. She says that when we focus 100% of our energy on our audiences and the needs of our audiences, we forget about ourselves and we're not anxious when we make our presentations. So ladies and gentlemen, to overcome the fear of public speaking, we all just need to become iPods. A few years ago, the famous author Ernest Hemingway's son Patrick came to him with a novel that he'd written, and he said, "Papa, would you please look at this novel and read it and edit it?" And he said, "Sure, son, I'll do that." So Papa Hemingway goes and gets a bottle of champagne or whatever he happened to be drinking that day. As I understand, Hemingway did like a drink or two. And he edits his son's book. He takes hours on it. He comes back to him. His son gets the text, and he goes off and reviews it. And he comes back to him and he goes, "Papa," he said, "all you did was you marked out one word in this entire novel." And the famous writer says, "Son, when it's the right word that you're marking out, that's all you need to do." Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying with that story is that we don't need to change much to be very good speakers. In fact, I believe all of you out there, if you have had one good conversation in your life, you're a good public speaker. Because all a great speech is bringing a good conversation and taking that up in front of an audience. That is all a good public speech is. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your time this afternoon. This is the end of part 2 of the Speaking Husky Teaches series, Overcoming the Fear of Public Speaking, Overcoming the Fear of Stage Fright. I hope you'll drop in on my website, thespeakinghusky.com. I hope you'll be back for more of my series. I appreciate you bearing with me. I believe I talked a little longer than I planned to. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for stopping by.